Hello, how are y'all today? Today, we're going to talk about the law. It's a pretty hot topic. Police accountability, abuse of police power, the police unions, qualified immunity, systemic racism. It's all been on the plate for a few years now. And I want to be clear, the number one most powerful tool you can have in any situation is knowledge. Now, cops pretend they don't know shit all the time because it makes their job easier. Cops are not trained to know shit. That makes their job more difficult. Shit like the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is not in their training. How much time do you think a law enforcement officer spends training out of their 8 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it might be in the academy on the rights of individuals? The only real training they receive is in how to make an effective arrest without compromising that arrest. They're well versed in your Fourth Amendment rights. They like to pretend they're not, but that's the only one they're really versed in, is how to make sure the evidence they gather can go into court. So again, the most powerful tool you can have when dealing with LEO is knowledge. Because when you state the law, they've been notified. When you have in your pocket a laminated copy of your ORS or MCL or whatever it might be in your state, and they say, you have to give me ID, you can pull that fucker out your pocket and say ORS 131.615 says, no, the fuck I don't. Okay? Now they're going to play games. They're going to say, I have reasonable suspicion. Therefore, I can detain you and ID you. Reasonable suspicion of what? What has the Supreme Court or the Superior Court or the District Court in your district deemed as reasonable suspicion? Because the Supreme Court says, first of all, what they say is, I have reasonable suspicion. That's only part of the statute. The statute says reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime. And what the Supreme Court has said is that means you need to be able to articulate a single fact that leads you to believe a crime is afoot. Not a feeling, not a subjective, an objective fact. Okay? So they're going to try this shit where they're, I have reasonable suspicion of what crime? And articulate the fact that makes you think I've committed that crime. And as soon as they realize that's not going to work, they're going to try to move on to obstruction. You're obstructing and impeding an investigation by not giving your ID. Blatantly unconstitutional. There's multiple different obstruction statutes throughout the country. None of them supersede the Constitution. None of them supersede the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment gives you the right to be secure in your person's papers and property. I believe it says effects. Well, we got a call about suspicious behavior. No, you didn't. Your dispatcher got a call. Your call center got a call, then gave that call to the dispatcher. Then that dispatcher called you on the radio. That's 3. That's fourth-hand information. Okay? Second-hand information is hearsay. So fourth-hand information is for sure fucking hearsay. The cops got a call does not suspend your Fourth Amendment right. Don't let them try to tell you it does. Now, there's all these little loopholes. Here in Oregon, they have a law that if you don't ID yourself, you can be held for 72 hours for fingerprinting and identification purposes. But in order to do that, they need RAS, reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime. Okay? You cannot be charged with failure to ID until you've been charged with another crime. Unless, of course, you're driving a motor vehicle with a license, in which case you signed a contract with the state to engage in commerce with a vehicle on their streets. And part of that contract is that you provide your license when asked by a law enforcement officer, if you're operating a vehicle. Passengers in the vehicle? No. Does the passenger have to stay in the vehicle when the cops pull you over? Yes. Does the passenger have to get out of the vehicle if the police ask them to get out of the vehicle? Yes. Does the passenger need to provide his name and date of birth? No. Does anybody ever need to provide their social security number for a law enforcement officer? Fuck no. Okay, so they'll switch gears. They'll move on to, we're going to play hardball. We're going to keep you here all night. We're going to swing the dog by. Okay, document all that. Film it. Because in most states, especially here in Oregon, it is illegal to extend the scope of a traffic stop outside of the traffic stop without reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime. So unless that officer views something in your car or smells something that can be used as reasonable articulable suspicion, which cannabis no longer applies, it would have to be alcohol or you smelled cocaine, which I've smelled cocaine before and it didn't make me want to arrest people. I guess that depends on how hard you smell it. But just shut up. Know your rights and shut up. Okay, if you're not trying to be an activist, if you're not trying to be a, educator or whatever it is that different people are doing with these cameras, and here's the entire conversation. Good evening, I'm Officer Piggy McDonald Stuffins from the Buttfuck Egypt Police Department. How are you doing tonight? I don't answer questions. Well, you were going a little fast back there. And, where are you coming from? Where are you headed for in such a big hurry? I don't answer questions. Well, why don't you answer questions? Under advice of counsel, I am hereby invoking my 5th, 4th, and 6th Amendment. If you have any more questions, I'll refer you to my lawyer. Okay? The reason cops look at you like you're stupid when you plead the Fifth Amendment when they're talking to you is because you are. The Fifth Amendment, if anything, is going to hurt you. Because what the Fifth Amendment says is that the government cannot compel you to incriminate yourself. So you say, I invoke my Fifth Amendment, which is your right to remain silent. And then the cop says, what kind of shoes are those? Nikes. Can't you see the swoosh? Your testimony, your invocation of your Fifth Amendment is now null and void because you just answered a question. Are the cuffs too tight? No. You just answered a question. You just nullified your invocation of the Fifth Amendment by lying. You said I don't answer questions. Now you're talking. You invoked the Sixth Amendment, and any questions they ask you are not admissible in court because your lawyer wasn't present and you asked for them. Know what the fuck you're gonna do before you do it. Know what you have to say. Know what you can and can't do. Know what the law is. Know the local statutes. For fuck's sake, man. See people all the time, this shit's hard. It's confusing. It's... Fuck off. If you can memorize every map on Skyrim, you can learn the local fucking laws. For real. If you can outsmart a 9-year-old kid from Korea on Call of Duty, you can outsmart every cop in America. Facts. Because they're not trained to know your rights. But there is certain things that they know and understand. Every cop working the beat knows what a 1983 case is. Every cop on the beat knows what Title 42 is. They know what Title 18 is. They know what qualified immunity is. They know how much their pension is, and they know how badly they don't want to share it with you. So if you're going to go out there and activate and be revolting, you better know your shit. You better know all the fucking games they're going to play. You better know every last vague fucking statute that they could possibly hang you up on. So the second most powerful tool you can have with the police is your First Amendment. Record it. They can't stop you. Record it. Any cop that tries to tell you you can't record this interaction is guilty of a crime. Title 18, section, I can't remember. Prior restraint is what it's called. Prior restraint. It's when you stop somebody from exercising their right before they get a chance to. So record it. Post that shit all the fuck over. Even those of you that have never had a bad interaction with the police, you've been lied to by the police every time you come around them. They lie, 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 lie. Either that or they're complete and total utter fucking knuckle dragging mouth breathing idiots. Or a little bit of both. But you see cops that are 20 years trying to tell you they have the legal right to ID you when any 5-year-old knows they don't. Oh, you're impeding my investigation. Impeding is a physical act. I need to get between you and your investigation. I knew a guy years ago. I was in jail with him. And everyone's like, oh, that's the mute. The dude's mute. He don't talk. And I was in there for 2 weeks. I didn't hear him talk. Well, him and I got out the same day. I got bail and his time was up. And I sat around for about an hour and waiting for my ride. And then she picked me up and we took off. And here's dude rolling down the road, walking down the road. So I jump out and I'm like, hey man, you need a ride somewhere? And I look at him like he's going to sign to me or something. And he says, yeah, man, I need to go over to Guadalupe. I'm like, you can talk? He says, oh yeah, I can talk like a motherfucker. I said, why don't you? He says, I learned a long time ago. The minute the cops walk up on you, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you got in your pockets, shut the fuck up. And don't say a fucking word. Don't say a word to the nurse. Don't say a word to the cops. Don't say a word to the screws. Don't say a word to the other prisoners. Don't say a fucking word to anybody until they let you go. He says, I've been caught with 20 hits of acid in Illinois and did 90 days in jail. And they did 4 psych evals on me, considered me mute, and just cut me loose. So, as powerful as your voice might be, shutting the fuck up is about the most powerful thing you can do in the presence of a cop. Because their entire fucking career depends on you talking yourself into a fucking hole. So if you don't talk, all they have is the facts that are available to them at the time. Okay, so say I'm out for a walk. Cops pull up. Hey man, we're investigating break-ins. You fit the description. What are they going to do? In order to arrest you, they need to come up with evidence that you committed a crime. If you're just walking down the road, there's no evidence that you committed any crime. And if they search you and they seize you and they fucking threaten you and if they do all that shit, that's on them. You can settle that in civil court. But your best bet, 100% of the time, is to shut the fuck up. I was at a buddy's house last year, and he'd had a roommate that was an asshole, and had to run him out. And the dude kept calling him for a welfare check. Oh, my buddy called me, said he was suicidal. I wonder if you'd go check on him. And sending the cops over to my buddy's house, trying to get back at him for throwing him out. Right? So at the third time they come there, I go out to the gate, because there's a pit bull there. So I go out to the gate. And stood there doing this the whole time. And the cop was like, "Who are you? Do you live here? Is Rodney here?" Blottity, 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 blottity. Got a welfare check. I'm not going away. I need the blottity, 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 blottity. And I'm just smoking my joint, listening to him talk. Eventually, he went and got in his cruiser, sat there for about a half an hour at the end of the driveway, and then went the fuck away. Again, I know the law. I cannot be compelled to speak by anybody but a judge and only in a courtroom. Police have no power on private property unless there's a crime. They have no power anywhere unless there's a crime. They have more power over public property. But on private property, I can tell him to leave at any time. And without evidence of a crime, he needs to get the fuck off. He or she. And he knows this. He's going to pretend he doesn't know this. He's going to say shit that makes me look like he don't know this. He's going to pretend that a welfare check is the same as exigent circumstances. In case you don't know, there's 3 ways police can come into your property. Right? Against your will. Now, they can walk up to your door and knock as long as your property's not posted. Anybody can. But there's 3 legal ways a cop can come in your fucking house. A, you're an idiot and you give them permission. Don't ever do that. B, exigent circumstances. Exigent circumstances would be a man with a gun runs into your house after shooting at somebody, or a bank robber boards himself up in your house, or somebody screaming, "Help me, help me, help me," from inside your house with the sound of smashing, or you just ran in the fucking house after running from the cops with 3 pounds of fucking heroin on you, or something like that. An emergency. There has to be an emergency, exigent circumstances, immediately evolving circumstances that lead to a viable, provable threat to public safety. And the third way is if they show you a warrant signed by a judge. Now, 2 things you need to know about this situation. Number 1, cops can lie to you and tell you they have a warrant when they don't. Okay? They can say, "Yeah, I have a warrant," because in their head they say, "It's not signed by a judge, but I have one." Or, "It's for another house and it's 3 years old, but I have one." That's why you're supposed to see it. That's why no-knock raids are unconstitutional. So, see the warrant. Read the judge's signature. Film that. And without that, they can't come in your house. If they do, it's a home invasion by armed men, armed people. So, I'm a big fan of the law. I know a lot of people might be a little surprised by that, but I'm a huge fan of the law. I like the law. That's why I advocate so strongly that the law applies to everyone equally. And that the law never infringes upon my rights. Respect for the law means you will stand up and not allow it to be abused. Imagine being a slave that learned to read and read the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Think about that. Not post-war, while slavery was happening. If laws only exist for those that can't afford to fight for their freedom, then they don't exist at all. Do you think Dave Chappelle is going to do prison time over an ounce of weed in Ohio? Every other black guy in Ohio will. Laws for thee and not for me. Back is blue until that happens to you. So again, to recap, because we're at recap level on this here doobie. Know your rights. Know your laws. Know your statutes. Know the code of conduct for your local police. It's not that hard to learn. These knuckle dragging idiots that can't tell a taser from a fucking gun can learn it. So, you can easily know more law than a cop. Easily. All they ever learn is the 3 or 4 laws that they're good at enforcing. When I was a young activist, I would catch 6, 8 charges in a weekend. Every weekend. All to be dropped on Monday. But I'd spend the night in jail. There's an old saying in law enforcement. You can beat the ride, or you can beat the time, but you can't beat the ride. Law enforcement doesn't give a fuck if you go to prison, jail, or not. They just want you to do what they tell you to do. And if you don't, they're going to make your life hard. Very, 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 very little of law enforcement goes into fighting crime. Very little. Most of law enforcement goes into enforcing mandates and illegal, unconstitutional policies like the drug war and traffic enforcement. And that's why less than 20% of violent crimes get solved. Because cops are out writing brake light tickets and taking potheads to fucking jail to be tortured. So no matter where you are, you've got a supercomputer. Are you pinky or the brain? Which one are you? Come on. You can fucking look it up. And if you don't know what to look up, look it all up. Go watch a couple dozen auditor videos. You'll see all the tricks that cops try to do to put you in jail. And the ones that work and the ones that don't work. Now, before cameras, cops would just take you to jail whenever they wanted. That's the way it was. Just arbitrarily, you going to jail. And nothing ever happened. The cops were never disciplined. They'd tune you up, fucking curb stomp you, drag you around by your fucking cuffs everywhere, throw you on the ground. I've been in a jail cell where raw sewage backed up through the shower every day for 2 weeks. Been in a 12-man cell with 35 people in it for a month. Yeah, use that fucking camera. On the way out here, I'd step off the bus station property to have a cigarette. Cops would roll up, I immediately go like this. Click. Live on YouTube, boy. Drive right off. Or, have a nice afternoon, sir. Not when I'm fucking with me. And I know goddamn well from traveling most of my life that that's what they were headed over there to do was fuck with me. It's not enough to know the Constitution. In fact, just knowing the Constitution is dangerous as fuck. Because a lot of it is null and void. You think you have a Fourth Amendment. You ping the right ping high enough up the ladder and they'll know what you're having for breakfast every day and how much the turd weighs. Y'all need to give a good close listen to Ed Snowden. We're all in a database. So, stay safe. Keep your camera out. Shut your fucking mouth. Yeah, I run into like veteran officers out here sometimes. A lot of them are, I don't know if it's because they're older or just because they've seen enough people to be able to get a quick read on people. The minute they start talking to me, they realize I ain't buying their bullshit. They can just see it in my eyes that I ain't buying none of their bullshit. And they leave me alone, thankfully. There was one city cop here that had it in for me for a minute that I kept trying to get my ID because I was taking pictures of him parked in the fire zone on a non-emergency call. And I posted them on the local Facebook page. So he was trying to get my ID for a while. And at some point decided poking a wombat with your dick wasn't the best idea. Yeah, I will download a scanner on my phone and follow you around, dumbass. You're fucking me, I'll fuck with you back. Him and his partner were the ones that were parked down here by the waters plant. I just popped up out of the bushes and knocked on his window. He rolls down his window and says, "Yeah, I got a couple of phone calls of a suspicious vehicle, and considering the number of impersonating officer cases that I've seen on YouTube lately, I thought I'd stop to make contact with you guys. Do you have your state-issued law enforcement ID with you?" Bum 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 bum. Name and badge number, sir. You have anything in the car I need to know about? Where are you guys coming from? Where are you headed? You live around here? Are there any guns, bombs, hand grenades? Anything that's gonna poke me or stick me? And they just laugh and drive off, and I'm hoping that some part of their brain, the next time they pull up to a car, and they start doing that to the person who's driving that car, and some part of their brain remembers me doing that to him and how fucking uncomfortable it is. So unless you're fucking insane and have the reproductive fortitude, whether it be testicular or ovaric, to stand up to the cops, don't mind doing a few days in jail to prove your point. Unless that's you, shut the fuck up. Nothing you can say to the cops. I don't care if you're going to report your fucking bicycle is stolen. Take a lawyer with you. Any interaction you have with law enforcement can go bad with you, for you. Can become long and drawn out and expensive and heartbreaking. And so, take a lawyer. This has been Doug's Law Class. Have fun.